One of the most important factors in if and how long Russia can sustain its war effort is in something you probably never heard of before, BTRZs. That in Russian is short for tank repair factories. As the name implies, they take vehicles in poor condition, repair and refurbish them, turning them into operational vehicles again. So, as you might imagine, this is where a bottleneck can arise. You could have an infinite number of tanks in storage, but if you can't get them into working condition to meet the demand on the battlefield, then it doesn't matter, and you're going to begin facing increasing shortages. So to see whether that is an issue Russia is and will be facing, we will take a deep dive into these sites. And while here you're getting a full accounting of these BTRZs, what you're not getting is a total accounting of the news. That is, unless you're using our sponsor this week, Ground News. Real quick, they're a website and app that gathers related articles from thousands of sources, putting them together in one place so you can compare how different outlets cover the same story. And each story comes with a clear breakdown of the political bias, factuality, ownership, and the headlines of the reporting sources. And all with ratings backed by independent news monitoring organizations. And for an example, here's a story on ending the war in Ukraine. Ground News gives you a full breakdown, and you can visually see just how different each side portrays the same story. The right here portraying it as more humanitarian due to the loss of life, the left calling it a fantasy. Another great feature is their blind spot feed. Here you'll see stories that are either ignored or hardly covered by one side or the other. And I especially love getting just a few breaking news notifications to my phone. As you can see again, using just one outlet to get your news from means you're not getting the full story. So go over to ground.news/covertcabal or scan my QR code here to subscribe. With that, you'll get 50% off their unlimited access Vantage plan with their special holiday deal. If you're already a subscriber, you can send Ground News as the perfect gift this holiday for 50% off too. So make sure to use my link. Again, Ground News. Again, these BTRZs are extremely important, which is why one of the first things Russia did early on in the war was to build new and expand existing repair plants. At these sites, they do everything from repairing major damage to vehicles that can't be repaired on the field, or in the case we're focused on, overhauling existing vehicles from storage and making them operational again. This can include being completely stripped down, installing new parts, even upgrading equipment, and finally getting into an operational vehicle. In an ideal world, one tank or other type of vehicle would enter, necessary repairs would be made, and then one operational vehicle would result. But complicating this is just how many types of vehicle Russia has. For example, in the last 60-ish years, for main battle tanks, they've had the T-62, T-64, T-72, T-80, and T-90, while in the same time frame the US just had the M60 and the M1 Abrams. That puts a real strain on logistics and a need for a much wider array of spare parts. So realistically, that can mean an average of 2 or 3 vehicles are brought in, ripping parts from some just to make one finished operational vehicle. And you can see this just looking at many of these BTRZs. There are just huge fields of vehicles sitting outside, like a scrapyard. Most will likely never be made operational, just to use when they need to get parts. This makes it really difficult to analyze. We could just count the numbers over the years, which we actually did. Also, huge thanks to Jompy here for counting all the satellite imagery I sent him. And this here is a simplified version. Behind each of these numbers, he went further and identified each type, condition, and location of each. It'd be impossible to fit all that information into one graphic. I mean, this one alone already got way too complicated. The problem is, by just looking at this, it only gives you an idea of what's changed. As you can see in the last 2 columns, we have a total change, then an average change per year. It's great, but it doesn't give us any particular insight to how many they're repairing per year. It does give us a nice numbers to see how many more vehicles, on top of our storage count video, that they have. The 3,345 tanks in storage, plus these here, give us a total of 4,636. However, it's really important to note here that a much higher percentage of these are absolute junk. Unlike storage bases, where the absolute worst condition tanks and vehicles are scrapped, here at a lot of these BTRZs, they'll hold on to any vehicle in case they might want to use it for spare parts to repair other ones. But these numbers also give us trends. One major one that stands out is the huge increase in 2023. The AFVs at the 144th, for example, went from 120 to 131, then 304, then back down to 140. The same with the 163rd, roughly doubling for 2023 before dropping back down to normal levels. Overall, there was a roughly 50% increase in tanks and other armored fighting vehicles at BTRZs from 2022 to 2023. And that is actually seen in our total tank and AFV count video. There, the tanks dropped just about 400 in 2022, then in 2023 the next year it dropped over 1,300. The reason for this is pretty clear if you've been following the war. Late 2022 was when things started going very bad for Russia. Ukraine had just taken back huge swaths of territory in the Kharkiv and Kherson offensives, and Russia was forced to do a partial mobilization, creating dozens and dozens of new regiments, including all the vehicles to go with them. But it's also important to know that each BTRZ is different. Some have been handling more one type of vehicle or another, others on repairing battle damaged vehicles, and some seem to be more for scrapping. There's two interesting ones I want to take a closer look at. The first is the 103rd. As you can see, it's just packed full of tanks, all T-62s, as well as a scattering of other AFVs. Starting in 2021, and as we flip through the years here, you can get a rough sense of the layout, where and which vehicles are moving, and so on. The central area is most active, while the area like in the bottom left hasn't moved in years. We could zoom in and get an inside look via a few videos that have been posted. Here we could see a wide array of machinery for every step of the repair process, as you'd expect. But it's a fascinating look through each section on the interior of the base. On the other hand, we get some nice exterior shots of the 61st BTRZ. This one is located southwest of St. Petersburg. And also opposite of the 103rd, the 61st by all indications is more for scrapping tanks and vehicles for parts to use at other BTRZs. You can see in the satellite imagery it doesn't have the same large factory buildings and infrastructure that the 103rd has. And this base here actually delayed this whole video. The image you'll see on Google is half from 2020 and the other half from 2022. I was real lucky to be able to find a provider with 2024 satellite imagery of the base. But as you can see, the changes are pretty drastic. But for all BTRZs, as far as throughput, unless you're sitting outside these factories watching every train coming and going and counting each vehicle, it's hard to know for sure. Backlogs, except for that increase in 2023, are not very obvious, and it's more likely that tanks and other vehicles would wait at their storage bases until there's space at the BTRZs before being sent out. So it's not like we're going to see huge parking lots just getting fuller and fuller of vehicles. But from all available evidence, it does seem that Russia is able to keep up with repairing and shipping out replacement vehicles. They got through that huge boost in 2023, and numbers have dropped back down to typical rates. But repair times are going to vary greatly depending on the type, condition, and age of the vehicle, and likely start to take longer and longer as they've started to scrape the bottom of the barrel in storage bases. So Russia still has a decent amount in storage as we know, and at least right now they're able to keep up replacing losses. But that won't last forever. It's just a matter if Ukraine can hold on long enough, as they have been, before Russia runs out and can't keep up sending replacements. Whichever happens, it's clear that this will be the last true war fought with Soviet hardware.